I'm on a family farm about an hour and a half north of Melbourne, and the first 6 months of this year have been one of the driest on record, in records that go back on this property for over 100 years. Today we're going to have a look at a few tricks that this family is using to preserve and grow life in their soil that's making a real difference in the coverage of their property in one of the worst years you could possibly imagine. We're not going to see pristine rolling green hills today. We're going to see the reality of dry and some tricks that can be used to preserve your property in that dry. Hamish, how you going, mate? Been a while?
Good, Tim. It's been a dry while.
Yeah, you guys have had some really dry weather, haven't you?
Yeah, we have had a pretty dry start. We have rain records going back into 1920.
Yep.
And in that time, this is in the top 3 years for a dry start. So that's 100 plus years.
Now, to put things into perspective, this farm, it's your family farm. It's not your primary source of income.
That's correct.
You have a regenerative approach to this farm. You want to see it improve and get better and build a business on this farm over time.
That's correct.
And you're looking at improving the soil. And then this dry period's hit. You've done very sensible things. You've destocked. You've bought in hay before you ran out of pasture, and you've started feeding out. But you're using some very smart strategies to continue building your property and to continue building the life in your property, even during this really dry period.
Yes, Tim, you have to look at the time that you're in as an opportunity. So when we're feeding out, we're thinking about how we feed out, how that feed and urine and manure associated with that localized feeding adds to the biology in the situation, and how that will progress when the moisture does eventually come.
So simple strategies for managing your farm in a dry period. Now, it's always contextual. Everyone's in a different position, but there's a lot of people like you with a couple of 100 acres and off-farm income that could be doing some simple things to generate life in their soil and get ready for the rain that has to come eventually.
Yeah, and when that rain comes, you want it to go in the ground. And one of the things we're going to show you today is the difference between the rehabilitated regenerative ground and its openness to moisture when it comes, as opposed to the more compacted material that was here when we started.
So Hamish, the first strategy that you're going to explain to us is how you use your worst paddock to feed out in, and you sacrifice part of your feed to actually build soil. Now, this was a really rocky paddock?
That's correct. So we're in floater country here, basalt.
Yep.
Large amount of it.
So you had a lot of basalt rocks all the way through this paddock?
Yeah, and there's no moving them, they're big.
Well, I can't see any.
No, so what we've been doing is we have this area as a designated area for improvement and holding animals for a period of time.
Yep.
So we mark out an area using electric fence.
Yep.
We roll out a certain number of bales to get coverage of that ground.
Yep.
The animals will eat 2/3, 3/4 of that bale.
So you're strip grazing your feed?
That's correct.
And you're sacrificing about 1/3 of your feed
Yes.
to be tramped into the ground?
Yes.
And then the animals defecate and urinate on that?
That's correct.
And you grow microbes. What are the microbes doing to the rocks?
So the microbes are actively eroding or breaking down those rocks. There's a whole lot of things going on here.
Can we go and have a look at one of those rocks that's being broken down?
Yeah, sure.
So Hamish, while we're looking for rocks, and I still haven't found any by the way, this is one of your strips where you've had an electric tape up. How long ago were you feeding out on this bit of the paddock here?
So we were in that space about 6 weeks ago.
And how long ago were you in this space here?
And we were in this space about 3 weeks ago.
So from there to there, I can see a lot of green.
That's right.
And we're in the middle of a drought at the moment. You've had 80 mil of rain since January 1.
Yes.
We're nearly into June, and you're growing green feed on the ground. So some people would think that you're wasting your hay.
Yep.
But what you're doing is you're actually storing the water that does fall in the soil, and you're creating biota, and that's getting you some green grass that will be ready for your cows to eat in a few short weeks.
Well, there's another thing going on here. We're also feeding the fungi, and the fungi pull in about 40% of the water demand for plants under a given set of situations like this where it's extremely dry. So We've rested the ground as we're moving, as we make this progression, and we're allowing the natural biological activity to take on and do the things it needs to do. And we have some pretty big frosts here, so the moisture is being accumulated, and because we have the thatch on the ground, that moisture that is there is wicked down onto the ground and not lost to atmosphere. So we're making maximum use of every millimetre of moisture that we can get.
So Hamish, a lot of people will feed out in the one spot all the time, but by simply feeding out on different sections of your paddock and having a progression like you would with grazing in a smaller way, you're actually fertilising the paddock and creating grass growth in a drought.
Oh yeah, Tim. We started with a ring, feeding hay in a ring, because that's what everybody told us to do. You can see them, those rings in that paddock for 3 years afterwards on the Google Earth. The compaction is extreme. This way there's no compaction. This way you are providing an even spread of manure and urine in combination with organic matter, and you're taking the ground pressure off, so everything can start to work.
Now I still haven't seen a rock. Can we go and find a rock?
Yeah, good luck.
Well, come on, let's go. Hamish, finally, a rock.
Don't you love them?
Oh, they're fantastic, mate. They break all your equipment.
Absolutely.
I can't see too many of these, but apparently you were saying only a few years ago this paddock was absolutely full of them.
Yeah, this was a really tough paddock. In fact, these are known as floaters in our district.
Yeah, righto.
And then one day the penny dropped. They're not floaters. The soil was sinking because there wasn't enough organic matter.
Yeah.
And so the soil collapses. And as you build the organic matter in the soil around it, the soil starts to lift. And that process starts to cover the rocks, but also introduces all of those organic acids to start breaking those rocks down.
So you start to get some more minerals out of things that used to be sticking up in the air, providing you nothing but drama.
Absolutely, and it's a slow process, so it's quite quick to bury the rocks in the organic matter in this technique that we're using. And you start to get the benefit of both worlds. So this paddock last spring was the most productive area on the farm. It's the most advanced in terms of this type of approach using the bale grazing in order to get that. We grazed it 4 times. Other areas of property we were only able to graze twice because it's not as far as advanced. So this is a really important technique for lifting productivity in terms of abundance of biological activity.
Now Hamish, you're not only burying these rocks and getting some benefits from that, but you're also now building some life in your soil, and you reckon there's a spot on the farm where you can show me the before and after of what happens when you build life in the soil in a dry period?
Oh, most certainly, and we can show you what will happen when it rains.
Fantastic, let's go and have a look. So Hamish, you reckon as well as burying rocks, you're also building soil biology here?
Yes, Tim.
What are you doing to build that in a dry period?
Well, you're doing 4 things over time.
Okay.
And you're preparing for the dry.
Gotcha. It's because you started doing this before it was dry.
That's correct. 4 things. So we have partial soil disturbance.
So you've used a cultivation machine, a soil key, to partially disturb the soil?
That's correct. We've introduced multi-species.
So you've seeded multi-species plants in the ground?
That's correct.
What's the advantage of multi-species plants over, say, a ryegrass paddock?
So the advantage of a multi-species, and when we say multi-species, we mean 25, 30 different species.
Yeah, like putting in 3 or 4 is not multi-species.
No, it is not. What happens is the various plants that respond to the climate they find themselves in, they respond, they express themselves, they go to seed, and they naturalise. And we'll see an example of that further down the paddock dramatically.
So the more species of grass that you put in a paddock, not only the more different types of root systems and microbial interactions you have, but the more resilience in the system, because there's going to be a plant at least that survives and thrives in the very worst of conditions.
Oh yes, we want a growing root in the ground as long as we can get it there, under every condition if it's at all possible. And the dry conditions show you what's possible. So we said 4 things.
Yeah.
Partial ground disturbance,
Gotcha.
right? Multi-species,
Gotcha.
programmed grazing of animals,
Gotcha. So on and off for a long period, on for a short intense period, off for a long period.
resting, and in those times, strategically where you can, the introduction of organic matter through bale grazing or a technique like that. And so in this particular situation, we have grazed it over successive seasons, allowed the regrowth to grow, cut the regrowth, allowed that to drop. The regrowth is important because a good portion of seed is present. So when you don't graze all of the paddock down to the ground, there's enough energy in the plant for the plant to respond, set seed, and you're looking for that naturalized seed in the ground.
Well, let's have a look at what this is doing to the soil, mate.
Yep. So this is a beautiful example. This is a clod, so we have done partial disturbance here.
Yep.
And we have a soil clod. And this clod differs hugely from what we started with because this is an aggregated soil.
So what are we looking at here, Hamish?
So we're looking at all of these little aggregated lumps. And the reason that they fall apart like that is that they've been glued together with the glomalin in the soil that's native. Now when it rains, what happens is that moisture is wicked down into the soil very quickly.
So Hamish, what you're saying is you're not only building fertility through the organic matter that you're putting into the soil, but you're also building the soil into a kind of a sponge.
Yeah, Tim, you're building a sponge. It was a sponge before we got our conventional agricultural practice in and we started creating compacted situations and squeezing the life out of it. And this is responding to the things that we're doing, and that's why we have the aggregation that absorbs the moisture the way it does.
How many years have you been practicing these soil practices here to turn that soil back into a sponge?
3.
That's a lot of improvement for only 3 years, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge.
Let's go and have a look at some soil that you haven't been doing this to.
Okay.
We've got some just over here, I believe.
We do.
Let's
Yep.
go and have a look. Now, Hamish, you reckon we're going to need a couple of tools to get a soil sample from here. We've got a headland that's right near the paddock that you've been applying those 4 treatments to.
Yes.
Bale feeding, partial cultivation, multi-species cropping.
Yep.
And we're going to dig up a bit of soil here and have a look at the difference. Just as well, there's a crack there, mate. Right, what have we got here?
So we've got a bit of clay.
We've got a lot of life.
Well, you got a lot of life, but it's deceptive.
So it is responding to good grazing because there are roots going through the soil, but you reckon there's a difference between this sample and the last one?
Oh yeah, it's down here at the ground. So this crack that runs along here, this is a cracking clay. So the shrinkage is caused by the lack of organic matter. So even though you can see this root here is working its way down through the soil profile, the amount of aggregation in this piece is essentially minimal.
It's really tight.
It is really tight, right?
It's not
really
breaking
tight.
open as easy as the last one?
No, it's not breaking open as easy. And so of course, what happens when it rains is the rain tends to sheet off, it'll go down the crack, but there's no real penetration in here. Whereas out where we were, the penetration of moisture is really, really good.
So Hamish, the story here is all about biology, isn't it? And the biology starts with these girls.
That's right, Tim. The cattle are a really important part of building biology in soil. But you have to have the right cattle.
And you've decided to go with Jerseys for your property, and there's been a couple of key reasons why you've done that.
Yeah, that's right. So we're on cracking clays that don't have enough organic matter. So that means pressure on the ground is really important. These girls have a relatively big hoof, so they're light. They tread lightly on the ground. So we want that. They're gentle. They have proportionately bigger rumen than other cattle per unit.
And they like
body weight.
shirts?
They like, no, that tastes a shirt for you. So they're more efficient.
So they've got a bigger room and they're brewing more bacteria and more fungi for you, and they're compacting the soil less.
Absolutely.
And then you're putting beef over the top for some of your offspring so that you've got a commercial viability to the place as well.
Yeah, there's two parts about this process. So we're looking for a whole regenerative paddock to plate program based around dairy, and beef on dairy is one of those techniques that we can use.
So we can't forget business while we're doing this either. Your farm makes commercial sense, even though it's not your primary source of income.
That's correct, Tim. The objective here is to regenerate the productivity of the farm to the point where it is generating money for the purposes of growing a business.
So we're not talking about throwing away inputs. In fact, you're probably going to have lower inputs over time once you get the soil to the point where it can hold water and biology. And you've chosen a breed of cattle to support your efforts in doing that. The future looks pretty rosy, mate.
Tim, in 3 years, we have essentially halved our overall per head feed demand.
Excuse me, Doris.
For product that we need to bring in.
Yep.
Right, it's really important, so we've been able to graze longer. So even though it's dry, we only stopped grazing back at the end of March.
So you had feet on the ground for a long period of time. I think the future looks pretty rosy for you.
We hope so. We think it's pretty exciting.
Guys, if you've got 100 or 200 acres and you're looking at some on-farm income, have a think about looking after your farm first and making smart choices with your animals to support your efforts. If you like this kind of video, don't forget, hit the little subscribe button. We're going to get out of here before I get eaten.
You can look at your toast out of your shirt.
Yeah, they're programmed for green, mate.